and FERC then went behind closed doors and made its decision. Beginning with the alternative licensing process, and even more so with the integrated licensing process, FERC basically is telling the stakeholders in the proceeding, settle. Come to us with a settlement that we can approve under our jurisdiction, which is limited to the licensee and this project. If you do, odds are good, we'll approve it, and if you don't, we'll make the decision. FERC really emphasizes settlement more than most federal agencies as the basis for their management decisions. Last point I'm going to make about the state of the art and science relates specifically to how FERC deals with factual issues. I'm going to focus on science. And here the glass is really half empty. FERC prepares a voluminous NEPA document, but truth be told, in my view, the document tends to be mediocre in quality. And let me talk about several ways that bear on the topic of this workshop that FERC really does produce mediocre science. First, FERC will analyze a very limited set of alternatives in its NEPA document. No action, meaning renewal of the original license, whatever the new license application is, and then what the Office of Energy Projects calls the staff alternative, which is their preference. Now, under NEPA, as written and as described by the Council on Environmental Quality's rules, FERC has an obligation to consider as discrete alternatives every reasonable alternative to achieve the project purposes. FERC doesn't do that. So it compares in a detailed way only 3 or maybe 4 alternatives, which in turn constrains its ability to understand how to respond to regional events such as climate change. Second, it relies almost exclusively on IFIM, in-stream flow incremental methodology, for its analysis of project impacts on aquatic habitat and resources. It will occasionally use other methods if the licensee insists on it, but 90% plus of its licensing decisions that relate to fish are based on IFIM. Now, FERC uses IFIM in a very mechanical way. It compares the availability of weighted usable area under Alternative 1 to the availability under Alternative 2. It's that simple. It does not attempt to predict population trends or future conditions for aquatic species. Now, I know that IFIM is not intended to make such predictions. I'm not suggesting it should be. I am suggesting that FERC uses IFIM in a mechanical manner to compare habitat availability and does not use any additional method for the purpose of understanding, predicting population trends or future conditions. Third, FERC uses the historical hydrologic record, whatever it may be for a given project. It does not use the models which Dr. Perky and others have described in this workshop that allow you to interpret the historical record to predict future change. It does not do that, even though when you read its NEPA document for any project, it will always say that FERC is looking 30 to 50 years into the future. They may do that in some legalistic sense, but in a scientific sense, they don't. They assume that the past hydrologic record will repeat. Lastly, the environmental document, which is a fundamental element of the record, has a limited geographic horizon. FERC again will say that it's considering all projects in the watershed, whether licensed by them under different licenses or regulated by other entities. But in actual fact, what FERC will do is focus almost exclusively on the project for which the license application is pending. It will not consider alternatives that involve coordinated operations of that licensed project and others, even though it plainly has authority to do so. In sum, with respect to procedure, FERC really has moved very far ahead of the federal family and is emphasizing left-hand, right-hand coordination with other agencies, settlements, complete record, and so forth. But in terms of science, FERC is doing a mediocre job, which leads to my last topic, strategies for a better future. Now, I will not talk specifically about climate change, since I understand Steve Rothard and also Holly DeRemus will do so. My strategies will be more general and hopefully will serve as a useful basis for their more specific thoughts. My first recommended strategy is that we build a better mousetrap. It's time to stop complaining. Well, no, it's not time to stop complaining. It's time to do more than complaining about FERC's over-reliance on IFIM and the stale hydrologic record. We can complain about that, but we really need to help them build a better mousetrap. Now, this is hard to say at a time when discretionary funds, whether for a public university or from charitable foundations, are really scarce. But assuming we can find the funds, the best way to change FERC's mediocre approach to science is to do better science ourselves. So model alternative hydrologic futures where climate change has a small and then a medium and then a huge impact on the watershed. Model them. Present those results to FERC. FERC then must deal with the alternative water future in its licensing decision. So either we persuade the licensee to do it or we do it ourselves. We can't expect FERC to do it. It doesn't have the internal staff capacity, much less budget. So my first recommendation is let's build the better mousetrap. And that applies as well to coordination between a project for which a license application is pending and other dams in the watershed. If we build a model which can predict the future, how climate change will affect the availability of water by year type, let's also include in that model an analysis how the license project can coordinate better with other dams in the watershed to produce greater benefits for the public interest. Now, I will get in a moment to the question, how do we